So now I would like to show something very important in Python, which is how to import a module. So on the left, you will see a very simple example of a module. And the module is called myfunctions.py. So it's actually just a Python script. So you see here that it starts with some documentation of the whole string, of the whole script, sorry. And then it has some function definitions. And here you see that there are two. One is called mySinus, and one is called myFibonacci or myFibo. Okay, so this one uses the Moivre's formula to compute the sign, and this uses a simple recursion to compute a simple for loop to compute the Fibonacci number. Okay, so this is not the important function, the important py file. Actually, in that same folder, I have another file called moduleimport.py. And you will see that here I use import, the import statement, import my function. So import my functions will go and look in my functions and will try to find this file, and it does find it. And then it gives me access to all kinds of different files that were defined in my functions. So first, I want to know what is going on. So I'll do help my functions, and you will see that here in the description, you see this part. This documentation is written explicitly. You see which file is talked about, and you see that this is parsed carefully because just some functions comes from exactly this part. So this is important when you write a docstring. The docstring structure is reused to create the help and to place things in the right place. And then the help on my functions tells me that there are some functions that are defined, my Fibo of n and my sinus of x. So it probably does some automatic alphabetic sorting of the functions, because you see it's not the same order as here. And then it tells me some information, and this information exactly comes from there. Okay, so this structure here on the left is very important because it's used in different places by Python to infer things. Okay, so this was for the help. Now I can do dir, and dir tells me everything that is known now that I can use. And one of the things I can use, you see, is my functions. So the variable name my functions is now recognized by Python. And I can also do dir. If you remember, I could do dir for any object, like this string, and I would have all the different methods that I can call that are defined for this string. Well, my functions here is now recognized, and it's a new object that has some methods, and those methods will be listed here. So it has some documentation, which is what we were reading before, a file name, a name for itself, and then some other methods that I could use. So I could use my functions dot myFibo, and this would be a specific function that was defined before. And for instance, I could ask for the help of that, and I would have the help for that guy. Okay, so we don't just want to use help, we want to use this to compute something. So I could use my sinus 3.14, and I would get some very small real number. Okay, so and it's important, and we'll see this just after this video, it's important that I use my functions because this does not work. I didn't add my sinus to the namespace, I added my functions, right? This is what happened. My functions is what appears when I do dir. So this is what I've used, what I've added to the general namespace. But then within the namespace of my functions, there is a new object defined called my sinus or my Fibo. So if I do my functions dot my sinus, then it tells Python to go look in the namespace of my functions for an object called my sinus, and that it finds. Okay. Now, there is another thing you can do. So if you don't like this, the fact that you have to go through my functions to get to my sinus, then you can use a new type of import statement, and it's from my functions import my sinus. And now I actually have in the list of things that I can access directly, I actually have my sinus. So my sinus 3.14 this time will work and will not give a name error like it did before. Okay, so you will probably see in codes all over the place that this is also possible. So from my functions import star. Now this is not very good because if you do dir here, you see that our goal was probably to add my sinus to the namespace. But if we do dir, we see that my Fibo was also inserted. Okay, so we don't have as much control over the namespace if we use this import star statement. Even worse, what could have happened is that something else was overwritten when we did this. So if some names were already defined, by using import star, we don't really know what's going to happen. We might take a name that is defined within my function and overwrite something that we have ourselves defined and that we care about. Okay, I'll say a little bit more about this in a second, but more on general modules. So you can get help on modules in this way, help modules, and this will take a while, but it will compile a list of all the different packages that are installed. And you see that here I have installed BioPython. And so here is the list of a big list of different packages that are installed, and you can see, I don't know, something with exif manipulation that I had for some reason, exif tags, robot parser, Flask extension. Flask is a Python web framework, Code Warrior extension. I mean, all kind of different modules that exist that I could import directly from here. Okay, so for instance, CSV, which might be useful for some of your homework. If I do import CSV, bang, I can use it. So I'll talk now about two more examples before going back to the namespace problem. So it's import math, and you can see the help for that, which lists all the different functions that are defined in the math module. You can see that suddenly you have a lot more. For instance, also the constants. You know, I can ask for mat.py, and also fractions. So fractions is a much smaller. It's a much smaller module, and the one I will start explaining. So if I do a dir, you see that only a few things have been added here, and not very many. So we'll look at fractions now.